Welcome into Bucs Insider, coming to you from the Bucs studio, presented by Ticketmaster. Casey Phillips here with Scott Smith and Bri Dix, and we have an incredible win to talk about. We have a very important game coming up to talk about, and some honors and awards, which basically makes this the ideal show all the way around.
We're giving it all to you.
We're getting everything. We got it all in this show. So let's start with some of these honors and awards, beginning with the Pro Bowl.
Yeah.
We got some Pro Bowlers.
Just this morning, we found out that Tristan Wirfs and Vita Vea are in the Pro Bowl again. It's again for both. Tristan, this is his fourth in a row, and I don't know if you guys know this, but 4 is the most ever for an offensive lineman for the Buccaneers.
Wow.
Tony Mayberry used to hold the record. He was a former Pro Bowl center, but Tristan's got 4 in a row, and probably more coming after that.
I think that's a safe bet.
And then Vita has his second, as he made it back in, I think, 2021.
Yeah.
So they're both in. Now, we do have some alternates. You know, if guys pull out, you can get more guys in, and both Baker Mayfield and Chase McLaughlin are first alternates. So in front of Baker are the 3 guys that were chosen are Jared Goff and Sam Darnold and Jaden Daniels. Those 3 plus Baker, all their teams are in the playoffs.
Potentially,
so
yes.
Who knows? Hopefully Baker is not available for the Pro Bowl because we're still playing.
Yeah.
But if the Bucs are done and one of those guys is still going, he'll be in the Pro Bowl.
That's going to be really
Chase
interesting.
is behind Brandon Aubrey, and the Cowboys are out. So,
So that's a
unless
little
Brandon
less
pulls out
likely.
for a different reason.
A little
and
less
then
likely.
also Levante David and Mike Evans are both alternates as well.
That's great. I love it. That's going to be fun to watch some of those guys. I especially love the big guys getting in it because some of those competitions are fun to watch.
Yeah.
All right. And then another award, we got a Baker Award again.
Again, second time in 3 weeks, Baker Mayfield, NFC Offensive Player of the Week. It's the 6th one of those in his career. I don't think he's ever done it twice in a 3-week span before, though. But 5 touchdowns, no interceptions, 359 yards, 153 passer rating. Huge win.
That'll do it.
Yeah. I mean, Drew Lock had a great game for the Giants. I was a little worried about that, but I guess Baker was just a little bit better.
Yep. Yeah, I completely agree.
And then we had a couple roster moves.
Yes.
We had one. If you're on a team's practice squad, another team can sign you off as long as they add you to their active roster and keep you there at least 3 weeks. So the Cowboys did that with Ernest Brown. Because we had just waived Ernest Brown and put him on the practice squad to make room for some other guys. And then Dallas swooped in and got him. So we had an open spot, and they signed a rookie tackle, Garrett Greenfield, who was a FCS 3-time All-American.
Wow.
So,
Not too shabby.
South Dakota State. And then one signing that we haven't announced yet, but we're going to soon, is the Buccaneers are signing the Duck. See, we've already got a jersey for him.
Got a jersey ready for him
Yep.
and everything.
It's time to bring the Lucky Ducky in.
This thing has
I love
been
the
gift
profile
that keeps
picture
giving.
changed, everything.
Yep, this has been incredible. I love it. All right, well, let's talk about that big win outside of the Duck. And I mean, we sort of alluded to it. Baker won that award for a reason. That the offense was humming this last week. So,
Yes.
Bri, tell us what stands out to you about this last week's offensive performance.
Well, 551 total net yards, not too shabby, and 33 first downs. Bucky Irving surpassed 1,000 yards rushing on the season. He had 111 yards after contact, which was a season high for him. And then he had consecutive explosive plays in the second quarter. So on the 34-yard catch and run, it was a counter gap play, which has kind of been his bread and butter. Both Graham Barton, Tristan Wirfs executed the pulls, and then Mike Evans even had a killer block on the outside to kind of seal that lane. He had a quick stutter step, worked upfield, and then on the 42-yard catch and run, it was actually kind of a delayed screen. Baker Mayfield faked the play action and then hit him on the screen, and then he immediately accelerated. But just his footwork, his ability to maneuver around congestion is insane. I mean, he leads the NFL in forced missed tackles. He's just had an insane rookie season. And then Mike Evans, vintage performance, 2 touchdowns. And I love, so he actually used the first one to kind of set up the second touchdown. But the first touchdown, he faked going outside like he was going to catch his traditional back shoulder catch on the fade. And then he worked inside leverage on the slant for the score. And then the second one was the back shoulder grab on a fade by Baker Mayfield. So just an absolute vintage performance from him. And then he needs, I think, 85 yards to reach his 11th consecutive 1,000-yard season. So we will all be rooting for that.
You know who else is humming, and I say it because of that first touchdown to Mike that you called. is Liam Cohen.
Yep.
I mean, this offense continues to evolve as the season goes on. His scheming, his play calls are evolving, and you pointed out that play. What is Mike known for around the end zone? It's the fade. So you make him look at like a fade, and then he cuts out, he's wide open.
It's genius.
It's great play design.
Yeah, I completely agree. And you mentioned Bucky. He had an incredible game just after contact.
Yeah.
Like for a running back to even just have 111 yards, and he had it all after contact. That's insane. And then I know, again, part of why this offense was humming was a group stepped up in a big way, and that was the tight ends. That, I mean, if you would have said we'd have this kind of a performance without Chris Godwin and without Cade Otton, and for your tight ends to still play this well, I think that was pretty incredible.
Yeah, so Cade's missed the last 2 games with that knee injury, and everybody knows that when he's in, he plays almost every single snap. And so that's a big thing to take out of your offense. He's up there amongst our team leaders in catches, too. So this is a big role that somebody's trying to fill. And Payne Durham, in the first game at Dallas, he did that and had 5 catches, but for only 27 yards. And they really didn't have anything for Devin Culp yet. This last game, Payne Durham and Devin Culp combined for 5 catches for 88 yards. Durham had a touchdown. He also had that 31-yard seam pass. There's the touchdown, but his teammates were making fun of him that if he was just a little bit faster, he would have had a touchdown on that 31-yarder down to the 2. But he's got great hands. And he's a reliable guy like Cade Otton. And then Devin Culp got his first chance to play, really, and on offense. And they all the way back to when the Bucs drafted him, the story on him was he's a big guy who's fast and athletic and can make big plays after the catch. And he hasn't really had a chance until now. And now
he made the most of it.
Yeah, he did. He made 2 really big plays that led to a touchdown. And I think he finished with 3 for 52. So 88 yards out of your tight ends. That's pretty good when your number 1 is out.
I think you had tweeted that there were 74 yards from the tight ends in just the first quarter alone without your starting tight end. That's pretty incredible.
Also, again, play calling.
Play calling, just dialing it up. Well, I know there was plenty of reason to talk about the offense, but I did want to highlight something on the defense as well, and it's that there were 5 sacks, and that is a great number. That is something that this defense has been wanting a little bit more of this year, and especially from some of your outside linebackers in particular that we've had, Vita and Kalijah getting in there, but now this was not only 5 sacks, it was 5 sacks by 5 different people. And that is a really great sign. Again, talking about play calling, setting people up, but a lot of times we've seen how Bowles, he uses guys like Levante or some DBs to send some crazy blitzes in there. Well, this was from your just traditional, all 5 were from your traditional defensive front. You weren't having to do all the crazy scheming, this and that. And that's what you want, is if your defensive front can get home in that kind of way, that really sets you up to be able to do so much more. And I was thinking about how on the show, it was funny, with Todd Bowles earlier this week, I asked him about what happened. Where did this kind of sack explosion come from? What was going on? And he said, well, they saw Shaq Barrett come back, and he said, quote, they decided they should get on their horse and get rolling, which I really enjoyed that quote from Todd Bowles. But he did talk about the fact that it is really great to have him back to, maybe spur a little on, but also give advice and just be that kind of presence. And so I think that's really great to see that you got all these sacks coming from your outside linebackers, and now you have him coming back as well, hopefully.
I was glad to see Chris Braswell get one, his first full sack. And I think what was key there was, he just kept going, even though he wasn't getting them. And to the play right before the sack and strip force fumble that he had, looked if you see those 2 plays, it looked exactly the same. He beat the left tackle on the outside and kind of powered him off him and was reaching out. It's just the first one. Bryce Young got rid of the ball a split second later, but he did the same thing on the next play and got home. So we want to see those young guys having that kind of success. For
sure. And we talked about that, that Bowles said he's had a lot of good rushes. They just, had some good opportunities. They just hadn't resulted in sacks. And then I also brought up Yaya. Now, he was a guy who, we talked about how many pressures he had, how many good opportunities, but they hadn't necessarily turned into sacks. And then the game before this, it was a half sack. This game, he got a full sack. And I asked Coach about that, and he said Yaya is coming off being a little more athletic at the top of his rush. He said he started relying too much on power there for a bit. And he said now Coach Edwards has done a good job working on starting on power, but then coming off and using his hands a little bit more at the top of his rush. And so he was excited to see the ways that's materializing these last few weeks. So.
You know how excited we were about Yaya last year?
Yes.
How he seemed to really come out of nowhere and be, his pressure rate this year is significantly higher than last year. It went from like 9.2% to 15.3%. Wow. So he's actually getting to the quarterback way more often than he did as a rookie. It hasn't translated into a lot of
sacks all the
Right.
times. Yeah. All right. So now let's talk about some injuries to watch. Bri, what do we have on tap here? Because we know this has been quite the storyline in recent weeks, and now coming towards the end here, are we healthier? Are we not?
Yes. So, and again, we're filming this on Thursday afternoon, so I don't have the injury report yet. But as of Wednesday, so Jamel Dean is certainly somebody to watch with that knees injury, plural. And Todd Bowles said he isn't really sure on the timetable or kind of how reasonable that injury is, but he said that Josh Hayes will be the guy to step in if needed there. And then no Cade Otton or Antoine Winfield Jr. on Wednesday, both dealing with that knee injury. And then Payne Durham was also a non-participant dealing with a quad injury.
I don't like that.
I don't either.
Nope.
So he popped up a little bit this week, so those will certainly be the guys to watch
keep an
as
eye
we
on.
inch towards the game on Sunday.
Could be getting Sterling Shepard back.
Yes.
He was practicing yesterday.
Yeah,
So.
that would be exciting.
upgraded to limited, which was a positive sign.
Yeah. And so now, Bri, also tell us what our trivia question is for this
Ooh.
week.
Did you know the answer?
Okay. The Bucs have had 4 occasions in team history in which a player intercepted 3 passes in the same game, and 2 of them were by Hall of Famer Rondé Barber against the Saints. Who was the quarterback that Barber victimized for all 6 of those picks?
Any idea?
No.
Okay.
I don't even know things that are about our team from back in that era, much less another team. You're setting me up for failure here, Scott.
I'm sure there's some fans out there who are screaming the name.
For sure. I'm not doubting
Not
that.
only did Rondé terrorize this guy for years, but so did Simeon Rice. So.
Man. Well, we'll find
I
out
feel like
a little
Scott
bit.
has a little too much
You know,
fun.
he
picking
enjoys
these.
this too much. He really does. All right, so now we kind of alluded to at least one of them earlier in the show, but let's take a look at what are some milestones we're keeping an eye on for this next week.
Yeah, obviously, Bri already brought it up, and everybody knows that Mike Evans needs 85 receiving yards to get to 1,000. That would extend his already NFL record of 11 straight to start a career, but it would also tie Jerry Rice for the most consecutive at any point in your career, and it would make him all alone in second place in terms of the number of them. So those are all very.
Yeah.
Anytime you're saying along with Jerry Rice, the greatest of all time, you're doing
Who
something.
played
Right.
forever.
Yeah.
That also makes it complicated.
Yeah, he's the GOAT, and his numbers are so far above everybody else. But in this particular category,
Mike's on his heels.
inching in, yeah.
He's
So,
on his heels.
and then Baker Mayfield threw 5 more touchdown passes, so he's at 39. One more would have him join Tom Brady as the only quarterbacks in Bucs history with 40 touchdown passes. And you don't want to go into a game saying, if he gets 5 touchdown passes,
Right.
but I mean, he did do it last week,
Yeah.
so you never know.
You never know.
If he did that, he would actually break Tom Brady's record, which I never thought I'd be saying.
That's crazy.
43
Just like
in
you said,
2020.
Mike Evans alongside Jerry Rice. It's like
Yeah.
anything alongside Tom Brady, you're doing pretty
They're
well.
both the GOATs.
It's amazing. All right, so now fantasy. Tell me what we're thinking now. We're at the end where everyone's done, and I know this because shout out to my husband for winning his fantasy league. He
After-
was very excited.
after
Yay.
doing
After
what?
listening to your advice and starting Jalen McMillan,
Yay,
that
Leon.
was partially what did it. So
Didn't you tell me that he started Jalen McMillan and Mike Evans and Bucky Irving?
yeah, I think so. I know at least Bucky and Jalen.
What a
I
time
think
to
also
be alive.
Mike. Yeah.
The Buccaneers are
Saved
the
him.
avenue to fantasy
To fantasy
championships.
championship.
Remember that next summer,
That's what he said.
fellas.
He wanted to be able to root for his
Yeah,
team.
that's a
and
nice way
so,
to go.
Yeah, which is a
So
lot of fun.
if you're still playing, if your fantasy league is still playing this week, then you need a new commissioner because you're really poorly run. You should never be playing. Because look at like Matt Stafford might not play.
Right.
Guys like that. There's a lot of guys that are going to be sitting. So. So let's just look at like the best and worst that happened for the Buccaneers in terms of fantasy football. I would say the best, we probably would be saying Chris Godwin if he hadn't got hurt because he was such amazing value. Bucky Irving emerging as a guy, I think he ended up ranked in 15th in fantasy points among running backs, and that's with sort of not a slow start, but he was sharing more time. By the end of the season, he was the RB15, which means he's a full-time number 2 starter for you, and his average draft position, depending on what site you looked at, was between 160 and 170, which is like 16th round. And in some leagues, he wasn't even drafted.
Wow.
So if you got him late on a flyer or pick him up as a free agent, he might have won your league for you.
Yeah, that's
And
incredible.
then I kind of just alluded to it, but I would say the worst of it fantasy-wise was Chris Godwin going down in Week 7. He was leading the NFL in receptions at the time, and more significantly, he was getting a lot of red zone targets. So the no touchdown Chris Godwin of the previous 2 years was no more. Now you have a guy leading the league in receptions and catching touchdowns, and you probably got him in the 6th, 7th, 8th round.
Yep, man, that's interesting. And then now, this is where we talk about some of our human interest off the field stuff. And I wanted to shout out Jordan Whitehead. He came on our show on Monday. He was delightful. there were a lot of things that I felt like would be interesting to talk about from it. One is just he did talk about playing in Bulls defense, and I know this is more on the field, but I at least did just want to say I loved his quote where he talked about how it is the most fun, exciting defense to be a part of, especially as a safety. He said Bulls lets you be free. If you want to fake a blitz, if you want to line up by the line of scrimmage, get back to the middle of the field, he lets you do a little bit of whatever you want. And then he said you get to blitz, you get to play coverage, man, zone, and he said it's a different call every play, so you're doing something different every play. And I just love the way he described that. He really, you could tell, was enthusiastically like, it's so fun. It's so fun as a safety.
That's good.
In this defense, which was really fun. I also loved, he said that their safeties coach, Nick Rapone, is also like a bit of a teacher. He said he's done some teaching in his past, and it influences the way that he runs his meeting rooms. And Jordan was like, yeah, not only are we learning football, we're getting life lessons. We're learning history. We're learning who knows what else. And he even said that Coach Rapone has assigned Antoine Winfield a book to read before.
Oh.
Like, he gave him essentially a book report to do that he felt like it would help him in some way football-wise. And I was like, I love everything about this. And then finally for our true off-the-field part, I just had to show you all the way we closed the show. I asked him how many unread text messages he had. I've decided this is a new game I'm going to start playing with guys when they come on the show. Let's take a listen to his response.
Yeah, can I look?
Yes, you can look.
Oh.
I want to see how many unreads. You there?
Unread. It is 1,604.
1,600 unread text messages. That's all. I just wanted to end on that note.
That's hilarious because my boy on the way here, I was like, my brother, I did text you back last night. And he was like, I was like, I got to do this interview too. And I was like, oh. I didn't respond to Casey the other day. She came up to me. I was telling him the whole story. He was like, that's you.
That's you. 1,600. That's what I wanted to hear. 1,600.
That is
unread
insane.
text
I cannot
messages.
stand to have
That
one
number, that
little
number.
red. I
know.
Yeah.
You have to get rid of that number as soon as you see it.
But
I
to
know.
look down and see 1,000?
Over 1,000. I don't understand. It
I
blew
think
my
I'd just
mind.
throw
That's
my phone
wild.
away and start over.
Yeah. Like, sorry, everybody. That's it. He said he'd rather just not have a phone. He's like,
I can understand
I would
that.
so prefer that.
Yeah.
All right, so now that we have got our off-the-field stuff tackled, let's look at our new next game, because boy, this is a big one. This is a very important one. So let's start by just talking about how important it is. That the easy answer, of course, is win and you're in, right? You win the game, you win the division, you're in the playoffs, everything is easy. Now, of course, there's not an opportunity anymore to get the wild card. That was originally something potentially that could have still been at play, even though winning the division is the preferable and the much more guaranteed way. There was a chance, no more wild card option. So if the Bucs are able to win, or also technically if the Bucs lose and the Falcons lose, but we're not considering that option. If the Bucs win, they'll be their 4th straight division title. And that's just incredible. I mean, I really think that's something we should not take for granted, that that is a hard thing to do in this league. And it's, it feels similar to last year where you were down to a division opponent the last week, you had to win, but that's the interesting thing this year is that was like you had to win the game. This one, technically, there can still be some if we lose and the Falcons lose and whatever, but either way, you're back to this division opponent last week of the season, win and you're in. And I just think it's incredibly fun and a great way to try to be getting into the game. But I mean, when you're facing the Saints, it's a tough thing, even regardless of what their record says, that we know that the Saints have done pretty well at Raymond James Stadium in recent years. And so this is the year that it's like, man, we gotta change that recent trend.
Well, I mean, Carolina was kind of coming to the end of a not great season last year, right? And they almost, we barely escaped with a 9-0 victory, and you kind of alluded to it, but the Saints have won 5 of their last 6 games at Raymond James Stadium. And in some of those seasons, the Bucs were pretty darn good.
Yep.
So you can't sleep on these guys at all.
Those include the Tom Brady
Yep.
years and everything. So yeah, I think that's going to be interesting. So to get that win, let's look at some of the things that the Bucs are going to have to focus on. And we know the Saints offense doesn't look quite like we thought it would at
Or
this
like
point,
it did last time we
or
saw
even
them.
like that point where we played Carolina 2 times so close together this season. Now it's been a little bit since we played the Saints the first time, so it could look a little differently. Tell me about their offense. Who's still out there?
Yeah. Think about what they've been missing in recent weeks. Derek Carr, their quarterback, has missed the last 3 games with a broken left hand. Chris Olave has missed 7 games after he got a scary concussion. Alvin Kamara, the last 2 games he's missed with a groin injury. They've been without Rashid Shaheed, their great deep threat, for 10 games because of a knee injury. And even Taysom Hill, do everything, I guess you call him a tight end, is on injured reserve and won't be in this game. So there's guys on this team now on the offense that weren't around when the Bucs played them in Week 6, like Dante Pettis and Marquez Valdez-Scantling, guys like that. So it looks a lot different. Derek Carr, they said earlier in the week that they were going to do a simulated game with him to see. The main thing is it's not a throwing hand, but he has to be able to take the snap. So they had to prove that he could do that. So they didn't know yet if he was going to come back for this last game. Both Olave and Kamara have said this week that they want to play, and Olave is practicing fully this week. So we may see those two guys. So, they could get back to some of their main weapons that we're so familiar with. But there's a very good chance it's still going to be Spencer Rattler, who actually was the quarterback against us in Week 6. And he did some good things and can move around. But he's a rookie, of course. And so things could look a lot different on Sunday, or they could look a little different depending on who comes back.
It's going to be interesting. And then how about on the defensive side, Bri? Who's someone that stands out to you on that side?
Well, overall, their defense has struggled kind of down the stretch. They rank 30th in total defense, 30th in run defense, but really the bright spot for them has been their defensive tackle, Brian Brzee, who leads them with 7.5 sacks, which is also first in the NFL. He's the guy that can take on double teams, is good on the twists and stunts, commands the point of attack, but also they've struggled really with the yards after catch, which is something that and I'm not sure what kind of the stat is now, but going into Week 17, the Bucs led the NFL in yards after catch, which has kind of been the 49ers' bread and butter with all their positionless players. But the Saints' defense has allowed 6.3 yards after the catch per reception, the fourth most in the NFL in 2024, and they've also allowed a league high plus 1.5 yards after the catch over expected due to missed tackles, which they're giving up on 14.4% of their attempts. So that is certainly something that Liam Cohen is going to be dialing up against the Saints.
That sounds like a nice little
Sounds handy.
advantage. Yes.
Yes. All right, so we are down to it now. The answer to our trivia question. Tell me, Scott, what is our answer?
Well, I'll tell you, the quarterback's name is Aaron.
Oh, yes, Rodgers, obviously, in all of
Not.
his years for the Saints. Yeah, no.
Aaron Brooks.
I'm like, Aaron Rodgers is the only
Aaron
Aaron
Brooks?
I could come
I
up with.
never would have thought
Aaron
that.
Brooks did play for the Packers and the Saints, so.
There you go.
Anyway, Aaron Brooks, on December 23, 2001, Rondé intercepted him 3 times in a 48-21 Bucs win here in Tampa, and that was the first three-pick game in franchise history. 4 years later, on December 4, 2005, in a game that was actually played on the LSU campus, by the way, he did it again, snaring 3 more picks, Brooks passes, and a 10-3 Bucs road win.
Wow.
And, well, try to tell me the 2 that have gotten a 3-pick game since. You might remember one of them.
Jamel, didn't he get?
No.
No. There was someone else. I know, against the Saints. I thought it was Jamel.
It was Andrew Adams.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow, you're right.
And then Aqib Talib did it once as well.
Dang. That's crazy.
That was predated much.
That was a good one.
See, the answer to that one was not Rondé Barber, and it wasn't. You always
that's-
complain, or it wasn't Mike Evans.
You
it wasn't Derek Brooks.
used Rondé in the question. That's cheating. And I have no chance of guessing him. I was like, dang it.
Yeah.
You've figured me
That's one
out.
of her go-tos.
Yep, that's my go-to. When in doubt, Rondé,
This
Mike,
one-
or Levante.
He couldn't pick off his own passes, so you knew
I
that
know.
was
I
eliminated.
was like, dang it. All right, well, that is going to do it for us on this edition of Bucs Insider. Thanks so much for being with us. Make sure you stay tuned to the Bucs websites and social media for all the coverage leading up to this final regular season game. We'll see you next time.